Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott, and I'm joined today, as ever, by Martin Riley, but also Mr. Dan Holdsworth. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm not bad, mate. I'm not bad. I'm well fed. I've watched the Northern Superchargers win at cricket tonight, which I know no one's interested in, but whatever. And I'm going to talk about Leeds United, so, life doesn't get better than that.
Lovely stuff. And as for myself and Martin, we've just recorded a podcast where we told you what we had for tea, so we're not going to do that again. And that's why we're wearing the exact same clothes. We haven't just been scruffs and worn these for the last 3 days. But Dan, what did you eat?
Just before I do that, I noticed Martin's not wearing a Leeds top because he's a traitor, isn't he?
Yeah,
it's outrageous.
I never do because Adam told me to once, and now I refuse on principle. I will always not wear a Leeds top now.
Okay.
I said at least one of us needs to come into every pod wearing one, and look at Dan and me. We're good sports.
I couldn't even find it this morning. I've looked all day.
DBZ.
Yeah. Huh. Anyway, for dinner, salt and pepper chicken with rice. It was nice.
Oh, very nice. And you made that homemade?
Homemade. Well, the wife made it, but yes, homemade. I was in Leeds today, actually. I was working in Leeds, and I got a new job, and I was in the Leeds office today, so I didn't get home until late. Yeah.
Sorry, anyway. We are recording a little bit later as well, as some people listening and watching on YouTube, again, must shout that out. If you want to go listen to this properly on YouTube, go ahead and do that if you prefer that medium. We are on there now this season. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps us out. But yeah, it's a change this season, let's put it that way. But yeah, it's later than usual, as we said on that first podcast, because we've had some tech gremlins that Will had to deal with, and then Hosty had to come in. It was just a bit of a mess. So we're here a little bit later than usual. But it's fine. We're here today to discuss Arsenal, as you can probably see from the title, who we play on Saturday down in, it's London again, boys. There's more London trips this year. There's lots of Southern clubs in the Premier League this year. So, yeah, a lot of that to deal with, even though 3 Northern ones got promoted as well, but there's still loads of them. There's loads of those bloody Southerners. If you're a bloody Southerner, I apologise. But anyway, back on track. Our own Thomas Hosty Cundell, because that's what his name came through as on the recording, spoke with our lovely pod friend Sebastian from the excellent PotShot Pod in preparation for this, which we're going to play for you right now.
Hi, I'm Tom Hosty Cundell, and I'm joined by Sebastian Hund of the PotShot Podcast to discuss our opposition at the weekend, Arsenal. Firstly, Seb, wie geht's?
Mir geht's gut, wie geht's dir selbst?
Good. That's as much as I've got. I've got 1,157 day streak on Duolingo, and I still don't know much past that.
Yeah, Duolingo's good for words, but not really for vocabulary, but not really for grammar, I found.
Yeah, I've got 2 good friends still that live over there, and we've spoken about doing days where we just speak German in the group chat, and it just becomes to the point where we get to around about 9 a.m. and we give up because I just don't know what's going on. So yeah, I guess sort of like, how's your weekend been? How was the first weekend of the Premier League for you?
It came unexpectedly quickly. I feel like the summer moved past quicker than usual. So coming back felt a bit rushed, and the game really felt like that too, right? Like a lot of growing pains of new players coming in, and a lot of sort of uncertainty that has sort of carried over from last season still going on. I feel like the Leeds perspective has been a bit more positive given last night.
Yeah, obviously. I'll be honest, going into last night, I was quietly confident, but at the same time, I thought there might be a few more teething issues. Yesterday seemed to be just one where it really clicked for us quite nicely. I think the opposition helped in that sense. And yeah, I think we saw quite a few teething issues and players trying to get back into it. I think the Newcastle-Aston Villa game looked really sluggish. So yeah, I think everyone kind of had a similar feeling, apart from maybe Leeds and Sunderland, potentially, from this first weekend.
Yeah.
Getting off to nice wins, which promoted sides haven't done for a long time, get off really well. I think the earliest 3 game weeks of the last 6 promoted sides have been a win in the 7th, 10th and 11th game. So getting one straight away is really good. But yeah, so let's start with Leeds have obviously been out of the Premier League for 2 years. let's start. If you could give us a quick overview of how things have gone for Arsenal. I guess it's kind of like a little bit mixed. You know, I think from my point of view, what is it, 2 second place finishes, but no trophies sort of thing?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the last time Leeds were in the league was 22-23, right? That was the first season where Arteta's Arsenal really started to click, with Gabriel Jesus coming in and Zinchenko coming in, and the whole team sort of finding a groove together and finding a rhythm together. Obviously, William Saliba coming in that season as well is quite an important addition to the team, as I think people might know. But it's been sort of a steady rise in quality of the squad from there on in. There's been some good recruitment, building on the foundation of the young core that had been developing from the early years of the Arteta reign, and Saka and Martinelli and Matt Odegaard and so on and so forth, which bloomed into a team that was really competitive the season after Leeds got relegated in 23-24, where Arsenal were famously like 2 points off winning the league over Manchester City, and didn't necessarily start very well in that season, having a few problems with sort of controlling games, being really, really dominant in terms of territorial possession, but not very good at breaking down low blocks, breaking down mid blocks especially, and that issue in possession and finding ways of breaking teams down has been a trend that has continued for those 24 months Leeds have been out of the Premier League, more or less. And that, especially in the 23-24 season, that was supplemented by an increase in set-piece goals, where Nicolas Jova became a household name in the football content creation space by simply being very, very alive on the touchline, and Arsenal scoring a hell of a lot of set-piece goals and sort of using those to grind the margins and really get into a position where they can be in a positive game state from there on, and being better at actually breaking teams down than not. Last season is a bit different in that there was a lot of stuff happening, especially at the start of the season, with a red card to Declan Rice in the second game of the season for kicking the ball away, which
I forgot about
hasn't
that.
really been seen since. Yeah, and then a 3-month injury, to Martin Odegaard, a 3-month injury to Bukayo Saka, a 6-month injury to Kai Havertz, really derailing the squad and derailing the dynamics we've had. Coupling that with, again, not really being great in breaking teams down, and especially at accessing the center, which is something we can come on to, which is like a big theme of the Arsenal over the past like 24 months. Which then led to a real big downturn in goal production, while still staying steady on the defensive side, which is Arsenal's strong suit. But that decline in offensive output meant going from 89 points second, 23-24 to 23-24 to 74 points second in 24-25. Obviously boosted morale by being in a Champions League semi-final and beating Real Madrid 3-0. Showing that we can sort of have these really good games against good opposition, which is something we've proven already. Like, the top 6 record is immaculate, but it is in these sort of less advertised games that Arsenal still show their issues in their game model, and perhaps, to sort of go into a sweeping statement, show that Arsenal has a really, really high floor, given their playstyle and given their solidity in defense, but perhaps don't have the highest ceiling of winning championships over a 38-game season, given their offensive struggles.
Yeah, and so I guess all that considered, is this season a make or break with Arteta, with you and with the fans?
I feel like the fan base is still very split. Like, people see Arteta as, rightfully so, as the guy that really put Arsenal back on the map and brought them back from where we were at the end of the Unai Emery time, really solidifying the squad, really getting a culture shift in the entire club. And that has led people to be a little bit hesitant of criticizing Mikel Arteta. I personally think there have been issues on a macro technical level that have been going on for quite a while that raise concerns over the overall game model. And the end of last season did kind of leave people a bit disappointed. And I do wonder, especially given the off season and a really, really outsized critical reaction to signing Noni Madueke, for example, there is a sort of underlying dissatisfaction, and if Arsenal were to sort of not win anything again and come in second or third again, there would certainly be questions raised louder than they'd ever been since like 21-22, when which was the last time Arteta was really not seen favorably by the Arsenal crowd. But if it would be enough to sort of spark a change is something I don't know at this point.
Yeah, I guess that is the ceiling for Arteta. Is it can he take them to that next step, which is the big championship, I guess. You touched on it a little bit with regarding to on the pitch. How can we expect Arsenal to look while in possession? I've got on here, I might ask you about set pieces, but you've already brought it up a little bit anyway. And I know from the weekend there was a lot of talk about it being quite direct, the long throws and playing. Obviously got your goal from a corner. So is that the blueprint at the moment?
I think there's some question marks about how Arsenal look in possession, because the general shape and outlook has been quite similar for a long time now. There's always a sort of 3-2 build-up structure in defense, with the right back either pushing in or pushing out when higher up the pitch, and the left back usually inverting. That has carried on with like Miles Lewis-Skelly coming into the team, who's a trained midfielder, who's taken that role on from Zinchenko. Calafiori's doing that currently, who's doing a lot of like chaotic stuff through the middle to progress the ball upwards, which works well but leaves us a bit short in defense, which is interesting to come. I feel like Arsenal over the past few years have been very controlling, very high possession, very very safe possession in a sense, where a lot of, and the numbers back this up, a lot of Arsenal build-up happens down the flanks. You see the eights pushing out and moving out to the wide areas to support the fullbacks and the wingers to progress the ball there. Not a lot of reticence to play the ball through the middle, largely down to the risk of central turnovers being something Arteta looks to sort of eke out of the game plan quite a lot of the time. So a lot of build-up through the wide areas, the ball often being in the wide areas in the final third, and then looking for combinations in the wide areas to move the ball towards goal and towards the box. A lot of crosses coming in from the wide areas, with the team sort of setting up back post in sort of half set piece type situations where the offensive players sort of maneuver themselves in a way where it almost looks like a set piece if crosses come in. But the interesting variable is that we do have a new striker in the team at the moment with Victor Gyökeres, who's coming in. And the general reporting has been that Arteta is looking to make the team more direct this season. That has sort of been backed up with the Manchester United game, where it was the third least passes attempted in a game under the Arteta stewardship that did not involve us getting a red card at any point in the game, which does speak to a lot more directness, a lot more trying to get the ball to Victor Gyökeres immediately and him being a safe option for us. It didn't look very controlled in the Manchester United game, it must be said. So how much of that was a planned thing as opposed to something more emergent from the game state itself and the way Manchester United were pressing is yet to be seen. But I do expect a bit more directness in the Arsenal game plan, which is something that is backed up by like Noni Madueke coming in as a left winger for Arsenal, who is a lot more direct than somebody who hugs the touchline and tries to get a lot of touches from there, which is something he'd more so do if he were to be a right winger for us. But as a left winger, a lot more directness coming in there. So I'd still expect us to be territorially dominant, especially against lower class opposition and opposition like Leeds, who don't necessarily have the same quality of squad that Arsenal have, but maybe sprinkling in a few more direct attacks as opposed to recent years where we see a bit more immediately going to Victor Gyökeres or trying to move the ball quicker centrally, which is something that emerged in the last preseason game as well against Athletic Bilbao, where the ball immediately goes into Zubimendi, who's one of the more interesting additions for us as somebody that can take the ball in the center, really turn with it, and play under pressure, which is something our previous sixes have struggled with to an extent, either with taking it under pressure or with being cognizant of tempo from there. Zubimendi sort of combines both of that and could be a key to being more open in the center and working the ball through the center more. So a bit of that mixed in with the usual territorial dominance we see from an Arsenal team.
Yeah, so I guess my questions are just on the back of that. I do have it lined up later on, but I want to ask it now because it seems more prevalent. Of obviously a little bit direct against Manchester United, as you just mentioned. Do you think that how did last season against the lower teams of the stand, like your bottom half teams, did Arsenal play then? Because that's probably how they're going to try and go, you'd imagine. Or can you see it being direct again against Leeds?
That's going to be the interesting thing to see. I don't think we'll be as direct as we were against Manchester United. I think that was a lot of the way they were pressing us, allowing us to get the ball up the pitch a bit quicker. I think this will be, depending on how Leeds press, because from what I've seen against Everton, for example, Leeds were quite aggressive, almost going man-to-man in their press and trying to force turnovers. That could affect things, and with the addition of Victor Gyökeres, almost create a game state similar to what Manchester United had a few years ago when they faced Brighton, where they were pressed man-to-man and sort of immediately went long to Haaland. Ederson had an assist for Haaland that game, which sort of indicates on how they were trying to play that game as well. But if Leeds are a bit more cautious in the game, I do see it similar to how these games played out last season, with Arsenal having a lot of possession in Leeds' final third, sort of trying to work the ball wide towards their wingers having touches, and then either finding combinations of overlapping, underlapping fullbacks, or the central midfielders making runs to get cutbacks, or just get a bit of dynamism going for wingers to get closer to goal as well. And from there, either work a shot from wide or work crosses towards the back post. Those are usually the most effective methods Arsenal have against these low blocks. There is still a question of how much these methods have developed over the last few years, because they're almost the same methods we've seen since the 22-23 season, and not a lot of new ideas on how to break these teams down. So a lot of teams have figured out how to mark our wide players so they aren't as effective as before, when to mark the runs of the fullbacks, and so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that changes with a very different type of center forward in the team now, both in terms of how we attack when we're consolidated in the final third, and just how we get there as well, on how direct we are going to be.
Yeah, I think it's been a conversation in our admin group chat regarding how are we going to set up defensively. I think, like you said, last night against Everton, we were quite aggressive, pushing quite high up the pitch. But I think we've kind of said we're quite aware, and we've got profiles, which means we can do something different now. And coming up against Gyökeres, we're expecting Biol to come back in, to come in for his debut, and we're thinking that we might go like a back three and stodge up the midfield as well by bringing Longstaff in, potentially into midfield, and then we've just got the kind of like this really defensive six in the middle, and we just hope that the other players can do something. I think that's kind of how we're thinking, maybe. But then, like you said, last night we were quite aggressive and were effective in that. But yeah, so on the other side of things, so when Arsenal don't have the ball, I know that our good friend John McKenzie praises Arsenal as being one of the more robust and one of the best defensive sides in the league. How can we expect Arsenal to look that way?
In that way, we are very consistent. There's this, and I'm borrowing a phrase from John McKenzie again, the hybrid press that Arsenal have developed over the last few years.
Pressing.
When Leeds are sort of building out, or when opposition teams in general are building out, Arsenal go quite direct, go quite man-to-man with sort of double marking responsibilities from the wingers, having to either track center-backs or full-backs, depending on the position of the ball in those situations. And then if that first line of press is broken, Arsenal fall back into a more consolidated 4-4-2 block. Very spatially organized, very disciplined, and very, very compact. There's a few key players here to look out for in Mark Nødegaard, who's usually the conductor of that press, very, very vocal and very coaching his fellow players as to who their marking responsibilities are, so on and so forth. The wingers are very, very diligent, working backwards, which leaves questions to be asked on how much of that is necessary, because their starting positions on transitions, for example, are so deep that they don't have that advantage that Mohamed Salah, for example, has, who cheats a little bit more on the defensive side, but has that space going forward in transitions. In the counter press, look out for Declan Rice, who's just an athletic freak in those situations, able to cover ground more than any player I've ever seen, and just an incredible duel winner as well. And then aided by two central defenders that are incredibly fast, incredibly good at reading play, incredibly good at sweeping in behind, very well organized with each other in Saliba and Gabriel, that just sweep up any danger coming behind them once the ball even is worked in there. They're sort of the big insurance policy there. The biggest question mark on that defensive side at the moment is the fullbacks, because in the first game of the season, we started with Ben White and Ricardo Calafiori on the wide areas, who aid the team quite well in possession, because both of them are far more dynamic than the other players that we usually play there. Miles Lewis-Skelly is a more stationary, coming into midfield player that sort of controls tempo and allows us to consolidate possession more, whereas Calafiori is a real maverick player that sort of picks up positions, drives with the ball, really goes forward. And Ben White is a perfect overlapper for Bukayo Saka on that right-hand side to sort of take a marker away from him and allow Saka more space, whereas Jurrien Timber sort of cheats back a bit more and stays in deeper positions, leaving Ødegaard as the only player that can really interchange with Saka on the wide areas. But the problem with the Manchester United game, for example, was that both of these players were doing a lot of very nice things in possession, but left us quite exposed in the wide areas on transitions, with Calafiori especially looking not very great and consistently having to mark, with Brian Mbeumo trying to go one-on-one with him in transitions, which did look a bit spooky. But in general, I'd say Arsenal's by far strongest suit is their defense, and both the solidity and organized nature of their low block and mid block, and their ability to gain turnovers with their organized press up front, led by players that are just extraordinarily good in out of possession scenarios, such as Declan Rice, Kai Havertz when he plays, William Saliba, Gabriel, and Martin Ødegaard.
Yeah, the bit that I picked up most of there was actually when you were talking about Declan Rice, because we've recently signed Anton Stach, and
yes,
he's very similar. And you know, last night he had a fantastic game. Yeah,
someone who just immediately would pick up to English football like a duck to water. He's
and he really has
an incredible profile for what Leeds wanted there.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure that there were interest somewhere. I know that Manchester United were reported in March of tracking him and being interested. And I actually do think that he's the sort of player that they kind of probably do need. Like, you look at Casemiro, but that's talking about something else there. You have mentioned a few of the players that you've already signed. So, you know, Victor Gyökeres, Noni Madueke, Zubamendi. There's a centre-back as well, I seem to remember. I can't remember his name right now. From
Christian Mosquera from Valencia.
Christian Mosquera. And so how do you feel the squad's looking? How do you feel that transfer window's gone? Do you think that you've got the depth for the season?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing coming out of last season, is that the higher-ups really were concerned about the unavailability of a lot of players and the lack of squad depth. And if you look at some of the benches from the end of last season in crucial Champions League games, there were 3 or 4 academy players that would have no real chance of seeing the pitch on those benches. So a lot of the focus was on getting these squad pieces in. There was a lot of one in, one out in that regard, in losing both central defensive midfielders in Thomas Partey and Jorginho, replacing those with Martin Zubimendi and Christian Nørgaard, who both have great availability records, which is a theme that sort of carries on throughout the signings we've made. I think Zubimendi is the most important signing Arsenal have made this season. I've already touched on the problems we've had previously with our pivots. I think Jorginho was a great Arsenal pivot for what we want in a pivot, but just didn't have the legs anymore to consistently fulfill that role. But especially in 23-24, there was a period where he was starting next to Declan Rice and showing us a complementary pairing that could really, really work quite well. Last season, Thomas Partey was miraculously quite fit for a whole lot of the season. Obviously, I don't like the player, I don't like the person, with all the legal issues that is carried on throughout his time at Arsenal, being a bit of a stain on the club, to be honest. But his sporting weakness was being a very, very vertical and attack-minded pivot, which could often lead to central turnovers happening. Someone who has declined athletically as well over the last few years, not really being able to track men as well as he used to. And in Zubimendi, we found a player that has that ability to be really, really good out of possession, somebody that is quite tenacious and has really found himself quite well, somebody that can be quite complementary with Declan Rice in a similar way to Jorginho, because they share a lot of those same responsibilities. Somebody who has that ability to be metronomic and feel the game in a similar way to Jorginho, while having the advantage of being 26 years old and having the athletic capacity to do that in the Premier League consistently through 38 games. But other than that, a lot of the other members, the other squad signings we've made are more depth options in somebody like a Christian Nørgaard, a Christian Mosquera, who comes in as a rotational center-back option from both sides that carries a lot of the same attributes as someone like Gabriel or William Saliba does. Very good recovery pace, quite good on the ball, etc., etc. Noni Madueke as somebody that can sort of backfill for both winger roles and also have the outside chance of being the starting left winger for Arsenal in a different way to Gabriel Martinelli, who's sort of stagnated since Leeds were last in the Premier League. And then the marquee signing of Victor Gyökeres, who comes in as a bit of a savior figure from people that think a lot of our attacking issues are simply down to not having a center forward, or not having a center forward of the ilk that people think of when they think of center forwards. I have my question marks on him, both in terms of his overall level, translating from the Portuguese league where he had an amazing record of scoring. But questions of his technical level, his first touch, his ability in the air, which has been a concern generally, but then in the last friendly he scored an incredible header, sort of underwriting that fact. And in terms of his fit, as Arsenal have historically under Arteta since Lacazette basically been a team that has a facilitative center forward that really aids the production of our wide players, and has led to great seasons for the likes of Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard, etc., to focusing on somebody that is the sort of exclamation point of attacks in Victor Gyökeres, and how that affects the wingers around him, how that affects the players around him generally. Can it drag away markers from the wide players as well, because more players need to focus on Gyökeres centrally? Those are sort of questions we need to be answering over the first few games of the season, but that has sort of been the window. There was a clamoring, and I think rightfully so, of adding elite quality in attack, as the game model itself is so solidified in how Arteta sees football that the biggest margins we can juice is getting individual quality from the players that see the ball most, which in our case is our wingers. On one side, we're good with that with Bukayo Saka, who's one of the best wingers in the world. But there are question marks on all of the left wingers coming in Gabriel Martinelli, in Leandro Trossard. And there was a space to recruit there to really up that offensive output. And I think quite fairly there's a question mark on if signing question marks in Victor Gyökeres through what I've already outlined and Noni Madueke, who has historically not been a left winger, is a bit of a different profile to all the left wingers we've had and doesn't have that elite quality, whether that is enough to tide us over and get our goal production to where it could be to be a title challenging team.
Yeah, I guess sort of like you hope with signing someone like Gyökeres with the downfalls that you mentioned. I know he's obviously he's not at that level, but you see City did it with Haaland, I guess, and kind of had to change the way that they played to fit him in because he doesn't do all that stuff. His first touch isn't the best at the majority of time. So I guess you just hope that what can happen, you facilitate you going forward to help Gyökeres rather than try and get Gyökeres to shoehorn into this role that isn't him, which is kind of what Manchester United did with Højlund instead.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, on that, you've mentioned quite a few players. You mentioned Zubimendi you think is going to be important, but is there anyone else that you think is key to the way that Arteta wants to play and to that kind of game model being successful?
I'd go with the 3 spine players Arsenal have, which are probably the most undroppable in the entire team. The 4 of them. In William Saliba as the bedrock of the Arsenal defense, probably top 2, top 3 best centre-backs in the world. I'd argue top 2, top 1. Who's able to sweep up any danger coming in behind Arsenal and really solidify their defensive output. Declan Rice as the leader of the counter-press and this sort of bouldering defensive unit that really solidifies the team. Martin Ødegaard as the press organizer and the main outlet for in-possession play. Like whenever there is a problem in either building up, Arteta has chosen to play Martin Ødegaard deeper to have him be facilitative for more build-up and more central build-up, or in terms of just getting balls into the wide areas and creating chances that way. Martin Ødegaard is the prime man for that. And then Bukayo Saka as the team's superstar forward and the guy who the entire offensive plan for Arsenal revolves around. Those are the sort of pillars of the team.
Yeah, and I guess we can move on to maybe a bit more specific for the weekend then from that. So cheers for that. That just scares me, everything that you've said, because like all those players that you mentioned are just genuinely like really good players, and I'm like, we don't have one at that level really. But yeah, I'm gonna skip straight into if you've got any notable injuries or suspensions. I don't think you do at the moment, really. I think you've got quite a clean bill of health.
Yeah, there's no real injuries coming out of preseason, if I remember correctly. A lot of the first team squad members that didn't see the bench against Manchester United were left out due to choice rather than anything else. So there's the likes of Calafiori, Reece Nelson, and so on and so forth that aren't currently in the squad, so to speak, but are fit. But I don't think there are any real suspensions or injuries at the moment, if I remember correctly.
So yeah, and I guess, do you think the lineup's going to look the same then from the Manchester United game, or do you expect some changes with, as you mentioned before, maybe going to have a bit more of the ball? Maybe there's a difference in the fullbacks, therefore.
Yeah, I think the lineup is going to look generally quite similar. I think David Raya, Ben White, William Saliba, Gabriel, Zubimendi, Declan Rice, Martin Ødegaard, and Bukayo Saka are all locks. I think the 3 question marks are we going to start Noni Madueke ahead of Gabriel Martinelli, who comes off the back of not his best game? Are we going to see Victor Gyökeres start up front, or are we in a game where we're trying to have more possession and more territorial dominance, where we see Kai Havertz there, who has a lot more technicality in that role and can link up with the eights and with the wingers more? And do we start Calafiori to sort of juice up the dynamism on that side, or do we start with Miles Lewis-Skelly? I tend to go with Lewis-Skelly, Martinelli, and Havertz at the moment, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I guess my argument for starting Gyökeres would be, you're playing him against maybe a level of team that he's more used to in Portugal. Yep. So maybe you get something out of him which gives him a bit of confidence going forward. But I also understand that, like, you can probably only really make those decisions if you make that sort of signing and you're aiming to get to Europe, not aiming for a title, where you want to make that sort of cutthroat for Havertz. And yeah, we don't ask for predictions on All Stats, aren't we? So we're into the last one now. But what I will ask is, where do you think this game will be won or lost? And how do you think it's going to look as well?
That's a good question. I think we've already outlined. I think we're going to be more controlling and looking to be more controlling in this game than we were in the Manchester United game in the first game of the season. I think where the game will be won is through set pieces, most likely. I think there is still a question mark on our open play chance creation that won't be answered very soon. There was a stat coming out after the preseason games from Scott Willis at Scott J. Willis on Twitter, who does a lot of Arsenal-related stats on a pie chart of Arsenal's metrics throughout preseason, and there was just a large gap on everything related to open play chance creation. Which I
think I've seen that one. Yeah, I think John shared it possibly as well.
Yeah, he did share it with me, so I think he did with you as well. That is sadly very indicative of the last couple of months. So I think set pieces will be something Arsenal should be looking at again, and maybe finding a way of getting Bukayo Saka into more dangerous positions. Other than that, the game will be lost through how we defend transitions. I think Leeds are quite good at actually carrying the ball up the pitch, with quite good ball carriers in Ao Tanaka and Anton Stach, who I like very much. And the wingers just breaking in behind the fullbacks. I think that is something Arsenal need to look out for, especially off the back of the Manchester United game, and where Leeds I think are most dangerous.
Yeah, the one thing that I didn't actually ask was, because I don't know if it is, if there is a difference. Do you see the strength in set piece attack as good as your strength in set piece defense? Because I know that for us, Leeds are looking at, we've built a team which are going to be aiming to be good in attacking set pieces. So yeah, that's the only question of where you said set pieces then, of where the game's going to be won or lost. I feel like it could be either way.
That could be true, yeah, because as much as Arsenal are very, very good at attacking set pieces, the set piece defense has been an issue in recent times. Last season, funnily enough, 41% of Arsenal's overall conceded goals in the league came from set pieces, which is just stupid, and far outlies the XG against we conceded from set pieces. So that would be an outlier, but in general, on all of the set piece stuff, I trust Jake, our co-contributor on PotShot at SetPieceSicko on Twitter, and he has raised a lot of concerns about our defensive approach on set pieces. So that could be something Leeds could be able to exploit, especially with guys like Stach and Jakabiol, who are just very, very tall and very good at attacking the ball.
Stach's taking our corners at the moment. Because we don't have a set piece taker.
He did that in Hoffenheim as well, which I've always found quite funny, because why are you putting the 6'4" guy on set pieces?
Yeah, it's one of those cases where nobody else that we have is good enough with their delivery. Isn't as good as striking a ball as him. We're looking at signing Noah Okafor. I don't know if he's any good at set pieces as well. So, and if he comes in, then there's potential there. But no. That wraps everything up for us there, Seb. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for taking your time out. Where can our listeners find your content?
You can find me on PotShot, the PotShot podcast, on all podcast providers. We still do a lot of technical analysis of the Arsenal. We're not doing as many podcasts as we used to. We're scaling down on like 2 podcasts a month minimum, simply due to the production of it being a bit of a hassle. But looking to do a very in-depth technical analysis on the Arsenal as we've done over the past. And otherwise, you can find me yapping about Arsenal and all my other interests, especially pro wrestling at the moment, on my Twitter page at Eulenberg_.
Perfect. Yeah, we are trying to scale up on ours apparently, despite not having too much, but we are trying to up our output on social medias as well. But yeah, no, thank you very much, Seb, and yeah, good luck for the rest of the season. I'm not going to wish you luck for Saturday because I want us to get something from it, ideally. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Honor being on here.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
I mean, that was excellent. We're in the big time now, you can tell, boys, because, you know, the standard of guest has probably risen slightly. That is not a slight on anyone we had in the championship that we did manage to get.
It is.
But bloody hell, if you're listening, Seb, thanks again for taking part.
Steph's on your mind. Steph's on your mind.
Steph is always on my mind, is Steph. Hi, Steph, if you're the one editing this. Thank you very much, Seb, for taking part. You were outstanding. So we don't need to discuss too much about what went on, but what were your main takeaways, Dan, from the interview, if you had any?
Well, from the game at the weekend with Manchester United in the way, he was talking, obviously, Arsenal have got a bit of an issue breaking teams down, playing centrally, and I think Manchester United did a fairly good job of stodging at the middle. So, you know, that's kind of interesting from our perspective, because I feel like that's something we would be capable of and will be capable of this year. I'm interested in seeing how our centre mid goes against Arsenal centre mid this week. I really enjoyed our central midfield performance against Everton, and you've obviously discussed that. And I liked it, obviously, but Everton weren't particularly good, so it'd be really interesting to see how Stackham do those. Tanaka go up against like Rice, etc., because they're really good centre mids. But I would fancy our chances of giving them, you know, a really hard afternoon at least, sort of thing. So that's kind of interesting.
Really hard afternoon. Cue the 1-0 down within 5 minutes. But yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I hope we can match them physically. This is one of the big things, right? If you can't match your team technically, you've got to try and match them on a physical basis. And we've done really good work this summer improving that side of the team. Definitely a big physical unit of a team that we've got now. But this next 2 games, Martin, we've got Arsenal and then we've got Newcastle. And in Premier League terms, there aren't many teams with better physicality, especially in midfield areas as well, than those 2. So that's going to be tough. But yeah, talk to me about that and talk to me about the interview, what you liked.
Yeah, Sebastian was great in, first of all, giving an overview as to what has been happening with Arsenal on the pitch. And it really did fill me in nicely because obviously I've not, you will know, but I barely watch Premier League when we're in the Championship. I stick to the Championship, and I know that league very well now as a result of the past 2 seasons, but I do not know the Premier League at all. I haven't even done any sort of predictions, really, other than the one that we put in the Discord, which was basically informed by the opening weekend of fixtures and some things that I heard from our own one and other bits I've heard from John on The Athletic and other things. But yeah, big shout out to Sebastian because he really did give me a good overview of what Arsenal's struggles have been on the pitch and where they're at now. And I also picked up on what was said about what Man United did well in the Arsenal game. I watched that game and they did a lot of things which made it difficult for Arsenal. There's quite subtle things which they was doing, and it just meant that they had space in areas to get players forward, especially for their wing backs to get on the ball and combine with the wingers. And yeah, it was really insightful. I'm terrified about their team strength, of course, because they've got some of the best players in the world in their positions. Bukayo Saka, doesn't need saying how good he is. And Declan Rice, again, one of the best midfielders in the world. Their back line, their two central defenders, beastly units who have got such good ball reading skills and physicality to back that up, that elite defending. So, yeah, I knew it was going to be a tough game, this one. But I do think that what Dan was saying about the physicality thing, that we will make things difficult for them. I'm hoping we don't go down really early, because that would be very bad for us. But if we can keep ourselves in the game for the first half, at least, then that's a tall order in itself, of course. But if that was to transpire, then I would like our chances of maybe picking up a point. But we'll get into more of the detail soon.
Yeah, how the turns have tabled. We went last season, every game we were like, yeah, we're the better team. We've got to dominate. We've got the better players all over the pitch. Got more athleticism, more physicality than a lot of teams in the Championship. And it's like, oh, bloody hell, away at Arsenal, one of the hardest games of the season in our second game. Welcome to the Premier League, Leeds. It's going to be a big, tough ask. Yeah, as you say, Martin, so strong in certain areas, and that's what scares me. There are lots of tall, athletic guys all over the park who are obviously, a lot of them, really, really proficient technically as well. But yeah, I don't know, like where to even start with in terms of like the strengths and weaknesses of the team. I think strengths-wise, they've probably got the best centre-back pairing in Europe. Probably it's up there, at least top three maybe, and they really do balance off each other well, Saliba and Gabriel. And then, you know, Saka, Odegaard, Rice are three of the best players in their position in the world as well. So just a really tough ask, but hopefully we can match them. Who's the player, I guess, that, you know, impresses you the most when you watch Arsenal, Dan?
Well, it's the centre backs, isn't it? Really, like they're the real superpowers of that team. I think Saliba in particular is the main guy. I mean, Sebastian mentioned him, and I was thinking that before he said it. Really, he's just like a really, really classy centre back, isn't he? Kind of the complete modern centre back. You know, he's quick, he covers space, great. He's great in the air, can carry the ball, passing's great, good from set pieces. He just kind of ticks all the boxes, doesn't he? Completely. So yeah, just a complete centre back. I really do like Declan Rice. I don't think he's that great at football. You know, it was like a super sexy or silky footballer, but just an absolute powerhouse, physical powerhouse. And I think that's kind of handy, isn't it, in the modern Premier League these days? So it'd be really, really interesting. I mean, I know Tom mentioned this, but him going up against Anton Stack, I think we've got one there, haven't we, in Stack? And that'd be really interesting to see how he goes against Declan Rice. You know, I think it'd be a real good test for him, and maybe a good indication of his level, which we're trying to work out now. But we do kind of feel like it is good Premier League level, so that'd be interesting.
Tom and Sebastian shouted out a phrase that John has coined before, which is large. He talked about the hybrid press, didn't he? He's definitely done that before. But another one that he used last year that I quite liked, and he used it specifically with Arsenal because they've got a lot of this, and he thinks that Man City probably need a lot more of it for their rest defence, is they've got a lot of large space defenders, and that's exactly the phrase that he used. Rice is one of those, Saliba's another, so you shouted both of them out there, Dan. But yeah, they just have quality everywhere, don't they, Martin?
Yeah.
I guess it's more like a question of where are they actually a bit weaker. And there's not that many areas of the team that you're looking at as particularly weak. I think the one thing I would say just before you answer is I think they could have got, and I said this on the Premier League preview we did, the 1 to 20 pod, they should have probably got a superstar attacker rather than getting both Gyökeres and Madueke. I think the money would have been better spent that way. Dan?
I've got hot news off the press. While you're recording the Everton review, it sounds like Arsenal are getting Eze from Palace.
Yeah, I did see that while we were recording, and I was going to bring it up later on. I don't know if it'll be done in time to play, but yeah, hopefully it's not. Hopefully it drags out for another 2 days. But if he is, that's definitely someone that scares me quite a lot as well. Another creative player that can play 10 and left wing and is very, very good at breaking teams down. And they've had issues with that and breaking teams apart and low blocks and all that. But yeah, Martin, is there anyone that you'd like, and is there anyone that you don't like, just quickly?
So everyone's aware of most of the good players there, but I just want to shout out one player who I liked when I watched the game at the weekend, which was Ricardo Calafiore. I thought he was Sebastian mentioned him as being really dynamic in his movements, and he was. I thought he was a really nice ball carrier. His movements off the ball and combining with the central players and the wide player on that side was really nicely at times. Obviously, it did leave some space behind, but you do want sometimes to have that to get more penetration. And I think if they can do something to cover that area when he gets himself forward, I think he could do be really, really good. So I know, when did he join them? Was it the season before last, potentially? I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
I remember, really. It's in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah,
I don't think he was there. I don't think he was there when we were in the Premier League, was he? So
no,
since we went down,
no. Yeah, but so I think that he's a player who I've signed on Football Manager before he moved to Arsenal. Seeing him in the flesh, this was the first time I'd seen him. It was just really nice, and yeah, he was a fine looking player, and he's probably one of their weaker players. So if I can find things to like about one of their weaker players, just imagine how strong the rest of the team is.
Yeah. I will say, Martin, I think you might just have a thing for handsome left-footed defenders because Stroud, it just could be what it is. And also, I just want to say, I really don't like the fact that Arteta brought this, I'm going to play 4 centre-backs across a back 4 thing that he's done. I mean, Timber's kind of transitioned into more of a right-back, a bit more of an all-rounder. He's done quite well there now, fair play. But Ben White's played at right-back and he's more of a centre-back, as we well know. Calafiori's more of a centre-back as well.
So would you say that Big Sam playing 6 centre-backs in a game was ahead of the time then?
Possibly. It's very it's Tony Pulis Stoke, or even Thomas Frank early seasons Brentford. They played 4 centre-backs across the back in a few games as well. Not a huge fan of that, but here we are, and hopefully we're moving away from that. I mean, John has talked about tactical trends and how we're moving away from that now, hasn't he, recently? So there is that. There's nothing to go off on the stats front, but we will start to talk about when there's been at least 5 games gone by. At the moment, there's just nowhere near enough data for that. So can't do that for Arsenal, but let's just say they were very good last season and they were in the top metrics for a number of stats. But as Seb said, they weren't always the best against teams lower down the table, in the mid-table, making their advantage count and the dominance count, because their record against the top 6 in the last, or the big 6, as people call it, in the last few years is impeccable. They've not lost a game for a while. So that is frustrating. But anyway, right, now to move on to the Leeds part of our analysis, shall we? Because that first section was quite long and we need to talk about Leeds. So what are we expecting our lineup to look like then, guys? And I think this is quite contentious, and I've kind of asked mine already, Dan, so I'll go with you first. I asked him on the first pod that we've done tonight. It's a difficult one because you think, we've signed players that could suit a back 3 now, and we could do that. Definitely could do that. But the team played really well in a 4-3-3 against Everton. I know it's a different test, but do you really want to mess around with too many components of that, or where's your head at?
Well, if you're playing a back 3 to get an extra tall player in, but we don't really necessarily have an issue with having tall players. We've got lots of them anyway in the 4-3-3 we played. You've got Ampady, who kind of is almost a centre-back the way he plays. Stack can drop in as a centre-back. So it might not be necessary to pick a centre-back when we've got 2 centre-mids that have centre-back-like qualities, certainly from set pieces, and they can drop in and fill in. So, and I think we'll be pushed quite far back anyway in this game. We'll probably be defending quite deep. So, what's the difference? Double pivot with a back 3, or 2 centre-backs and 3 sort of hard-working centre-mids? There's not a lot of difference really in the kind of low block phase. So I'm of the mind, and Farke isn't one to tweak too much and change too much. So I wonder if he'll just stick to the 4-3-3 shape. There might be personnel change, but he might just stick to that shape. It'll just be a lower block version of that. That's what I think will happen. Just because Farke doesn't change, but
Farke doesn't change, so then I guess it comes down to whether we think we'll dominate the ball a little bit, or we'll try to, but I guess that's skipping ahead a bit here. Martin, what are we expecting the lineup to look like? Do you actually think there will be a change anywhere then? I'm thinking in particular maybe a forward.
Yeah, that is probably the thing that I would think to change. I agree with Dan. I don't think Farke will change to back 3. I would not be against it. I do think that it could help things, and in the back 3 you could have Strauch as the outside left side centre-back and have him pushing much further forward than what he would normally do. So that would give you an extra body in the midfield areas. But I'd be equally happy with the 4-3-3. It'll just look a lot different to what it did against Everton, because we'll be much further back, I would expect. So yeah, I think the lineup will be Perry in goal, Bogle, and it will be Roden and Biol and Goodmanson in the back line. Then the midfield will change slightly. I think Tanaka will drop out for Longstaff. I think that'll be for extra height from set pieces and just for a bit of extra out of position work rate. And we just know that Longstaff is a capable performer at this level and is used to playing against big sides like this. So I think he'll be a good choice for this. I'll be sad to see Tanaka and Strout drop out, but needs must. We've got the team now to be able to do this sort of thing. And if Fark does just stick to the exact same team each time when they do well, and that's not going to do well, and that could possibly be what happens. It could be the exact same team because we won and because Fark has done that before. I hope that's not the case, and I hope he does show a bit of nous here and make a few little tweaks. And then further forward, I'd expect it to be the same wide players. I think it'll still be James and Nyonto on the wings, but I think we could see Mecha come in because he scored. And we know how Farkel does like to reward goals, and I think that would be the right choice. I don't think Perot had a bad game in the game against Everton. I thought he did some nice things. He dropped deep and linked up really well. But we're going to need more of an outlet in this one. We're going to need someone who will be able to bring down aerial balls, and we know for a fact that he's not going to win any duel against those two monsters of centre backs that Arsenal have got. Mecha still probably won't win a lot of them, but he'll put them off and their clearance may not go where they want it to go, and he will win some as well. So I think we're going to need that, and we'll need a way of the ball to stick, and I think Mecha will make it stick a bit more in this one and be able to do a better job of holding off Arsenal's defenders and midfielders if they do mark him instead of the centre-backs. Who knows how it'll play out, but I think Mecha will be a better choice personally.
He's also a better defender from corners too.
That too.
Yeah, that's another big point. Some people listening might be confused why we're all discussing back threes right now. We've never done that under Farker, apart from the 3-1 effort that we've tried a few times. But we never really started with it, apart from a couple of pre-season games 2 summers ago now, not this summer. So, yeah, I just think it's important to quickly address that, which is to say that I think we've recruited in such a way that we've got flexibility to do that. I'm not saying we'll see it loads, but I just think that there's no reason why we wouldn't occasionally. We've got players that probably suit that. Rodon's done it a lot for Wales. Biel's done it a lot for Slovenia and for Udinese. Strauch's not so much, but I think as Martin said, he'd suit that left centre back role in a 3. So don't see a reason why we couldn't do that some games. But you're probably both right that there's not going to be too many changes in terms of the shape. It's probably going to be a 4-3-3 with personnel tweaks. But the only other thing I would say is, Martin, you made 3 changes there after a win. That is unheard of for Farker in the Championship. Last season, he made the fewest changes of any EFL manager, any Championship manager in the entire division over the season, game to game. We had the most settled lineup, as if you'd like to put it that way. So it's not something he often does, and so I'm a little bit concerned that it's just going to be the same side completely.
Me too. Well, that's why I said it as well. That I think that is also possible that he could just.
You said Tanaka and Strauch, it would be very harsh if you took them out. They were that good, so I could see him sticking with them. Pirot's the one. If I had to make one change, because I would be all right with Strauch and Tanaka, it would be Pirot to come out for Mecha, because I just think that, like you said, in terms of his ability to take the ball, that is so crucial. And when you can relieve pressure for just a few seconds, help get other forwards into play, that's going to be really important. I don't think that's Pirot's game at all. He can connect play quite well. He's got a good range of pass, but with someone up his backside, it's not going to work. Not against Gabriel and Saliba. They'll have him for dinner. So that's where I stand. Dan, I kind of did ask you, but do you think that Farker will actually make these changes that we've discussed?
I think he'll bring Jacobiol in. I think he's clearly the number 1 centre back, so he'll find space for him. Probably Strike comes out, but if you're going to base it on performance, you're dropping Rodon, aren't you? Not that Rodon played badly, but Strike was one of the standout players. And I think Biel's fine left or right, so that works both ways. I would bring Longstaff in. I think this is a horses for courses game, and he's the horse for that game. He's a powerful athlete, Longstaff, isn't he? He can counter those guys. Probably got more goal threat than Tanaka as well, charging through later into the box as well. kind of fairly traditional kind of English, sort of centre mid that bursts forward type thing. So I think Longstaff would be a good pick, but yeah, Farke doesn't make changes. Nemecha would be my pick also, as long as he can make an hour. I think there's some worries about him not being fit enough to start or play a long time, but if he can do an hour, then start him. Pro can come off the bench late if he need be. And just a wild card suggestion. Yeah, just a bit of a wild. Well, yeah, Calvert-Lewin. Yeah, if he can play 20-30 minutes, that's a like for like replacement, isn't it, for Nemecha? So that might work. And wild card selection. Who's the most disciplined, best sort of hardest working winger we've got at the club? Who's the best defensive?
Oh, Jack Harrison.
Jack Harrison.
I mean, from a profile perspective, maybe this is a good game for a player like Jack Harrison. Who he really looks after his fullback, really works hard. His actual hold-up play is generally pretty good. He can put the ball to him, he holds it up. There's a tactical argument for picking a winger like Jack Harrison in this game, isn't there? For that kind of outlet. And his hard work.
If he starts Harrison and James in this game, I'm blaming you, Dan.
He'll have listened to this pod and gone, actually, that's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll happen. I think he'll go with Nonto and Dan James, but you never know. It's not a wild suggestion, isn't it? In terms of the tactical approach, it makes somewhat sense, even though I think he's way down the pecking order. So yeah, I think he will make changes. It'll be all maybe Longstaff, maybe Nemecha, but that'll be it.
Yeah, I think you're both right. It's just that that whole nagging doubt in your brain of Farke changing a winning team in the Championship just didn't really happen. So that's what's in my brain. But I might have to change my stance on that now a little bit because, like Martin said, we've got a squad now. We have a squad. Yeah. We've got to be able to use it. You've got to be able to use horses for courses and play players in certain games that suit more. And if he doesn't do that, then we're going to get relegated. It is quite simple. It's a very basic level of tactical flexibility that he needs to show this season. And I think he probably will. He probably both right. The other one that should be an outlet for us, Dan, as well, is probably Dan James. So you can go over the top of Arsenal at times. There might be opportunities to do so. Obviously, they are very, very well coached out of possession. Probably the best out of possession team in Europe over the last 3 seasons or so. But Dan James probably would get, moments where he might be able to run in behind one of their back line, and that could be quite dangerous for us. That's enough on that. We've answered that in loads of detail because it is a bit confusing, I guess. But which players are we going to assume that will cause Arsenal the most problems? I kind of led there with a bit of Dan James talk. Is there anyone who might also struggle though as well? I think we should start with who might actually be a player that could be quite useful in this game. Dan James, I'll say, is one. The other one I would say is probably Anton Stack if you're going to win a midfield battle, and Longstaff if he's in there, and Ampadu, your physical guys, just to stodge things up. It's going to be somewhere between a low and mid block, probably more low, even if we don't want it to be. Arsenal will force us into that. That's the unfortunate situation, the reality. So those kinds of players are going to be so crucial in just mopping up and making sure we win those second balls and making sure the ball is nowhere near our box as much as possible. So that's one of the key areas that I'm looking for in this game. Dan?
Yeah, we've got to beat them up, haven't we, and make them annoyed and break the game up. We've got to we've got to smack them around a bit, basically. Yep. And as much as you can do in modern day football. So that's really important. So yeah, it's that unit versus the midfield unit. I think it's the outlets, isn't it? The outlets are going to be key. We're going to need to relieve pressure. So like you say, Dan James, ball over the top for Dan James to chase. If we can get Willie Nonto on the ball in kind of space, probably more central than wide. Probably find him drifting in field combined with the centre forward, almost like a second striker at times. So we can get him on and get him turning and running at the opposition. That might that'll be important. So we're going to need outlets, aren't we? And perhaps occasional raids from our fullback if we have enough cover. The game state allows that. So it's just going to be getting down the wings, isn't it? And now and again, here and there, just to try and hurt them. And also, I think, we can get set pieces later, but I think we could hurt them from our attacking set pieces as well.
Yeah, set piece is a big one, definitely, for sure. Martin, who are you a bit more concerned about, I guess, in this game then, from a Leeds perspective?
Well, I think Arsenal's most individualistic attacker who should worry us most is probably Bukayo Saka, right? And Goodmanson was good against Everton, but he didn't have a whole lot put up against him. He didn't have to do a whole lot of defending down that side. He was mainly focused on the other side of the pitch and trying to get Ndiaye onto the ball, so he didn't have to do a whole lot of defending. I think he'll have to do a whole lot of defending in this one, and I think any fullback in the league will struggle against a guy like Bukayo Saka. So Goodmanson, it's no slight on Goodmanson. He's up against one of the world's best right wingers here. There's not many who are better than Saka. Rafinha is better. Who else? I can't think of. Yamal. He'll be another one who's better. So there's not very many who are better than what he does on that right side in the world. So if Goodmanson has a bad game here, that's fine. I don't expect him to. If he does well, amazing. But yeah, that would be if I had to pick one area, that would be the one area for me.
The same. That was exactly the same over here.
Actually, if I could jump in with one, actually, the opposite side might be true. I think Martinelli's out of form and he's not playing particularly well for Arsenal. He's one of the players they're not happy with at the moment. It might be an opportunity for Bogle to get up against a player who's lacking in confidence. I think Bogle, had a tough opposite play last against Everton with Ndiaye. He's a really good player. He's one of Everton's genuinely good players, isn't he? In relatively speaking, Martinelli's probably not that good in relation to the rest of the Arsenal team. So maybe Bogle gets on top of that and has some opportunities to attack down the right. Maybe.
Yeah. One of the other individual battles I'm interested in is Gyökeres. Gyökeres is a player that this team likes, and we probably should have signed when he was at Coventry way back when. We didn't. Instead, we went a different way, and it was quite a lot of fun. Martin, before you start shouting at me, I agree that it was a lot of fun. Stop giving me that look. But he was certainly a profile that I liked. I just think it's a bit of a waste. I'm not saying he's a bad player and he won't score some goals in this team, but he can be an outlet player, and he's quite a big, strong guy. But against players like Rodon and Biol and even Strout, I think we could rough him up a bit, especially Biol. It does make sense to get that big Eastern European centre-back that loves defending and has been doing it for years with Udinese at the bottom end of that league. Makes sense to have him against him and to really kind of kick him about, like you said, Dan. But I just think that's really interesting. He is rumoured to potentially be injured, but if he's not, he'll play because Havertz is injured, Norgard is injured, not that matters too much, and obviously Ben White's also injured. They're out of the game. So that's an area where I'm hoping they do have to play him. They might play Madueke on the left, by the way, Dan. That's possible against Bogle, and that means you'd have to do a lot more defending on the outside because Madueke is left-footed. So that wouldn't be great. I think he'd be really direct against him, and I don't think that would be particularly fun. I think Madueke could have some joy there. I think Bogle's a boyhood Arsenal fan, by the way. That's just a random one I've just thought of. But yeah, so there's a few matchups that worry me, and that's probably one of them. But I'm not as worried about Gyökeres. I'm more worried about Saka. I'm more worried about if Madueke has to play. That might be a bit concerning as well. Anything to add here, or can we move on?
I was wondering who will be replacing Ben White at right back now.
Timber, who's genuinely a really nice player, to be fair.
No, I know Timber. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
So yeah, centre back has become a right back, and is pretty good there, to be fair. So yeah, the next question is probably an interesting one now because this is the first time doing a Leeds podcast in probably over 2.5 seasons, about 2.5 seasons now, where we've come up against a team that are going to be better than us in possession. So any changes to our tactics for this, either in or out of possession? I mean, we're just not going to have as much of the ball as usual, are we, Martin?
100% not. We're not going to have as much of the ball. That's clear to anyone with even a quarter of a brain. We will have to change our style in this one. We cannot be as aggressive as what we were last season. But I do think that the 4-1-4-1 block, which we're currently doing, and which we did against Everton, if we do go with a 4-3-3, I think that could be quite nice. It gives you the middle four spine of the midfield unit with Ampadu behind. And what Arsenal do a lot of is they have players who do float around a bit. The guy I'm looking at here for this is Martin Odegaard. I think that if we want to get any joy out of this, we have to try our best to limit Odegaard's involvement in the game, which is a very difficult thing to do because he's a phenomenal footballer. Such a great footballing brain, and will make our life difficult, and he will keep that tempo going. And the cat has just run across my desk. Apologies. So I think that could work quite nicely for our probably mid to low block. It'll look for most of this game, but I do think that we should also not be passive the entire time, because then we'll end up with the same thing which happened to Everton against us, right? But they allowed us to have the ball. They tried to make things difficult for them, but we still did create things. And Arsenal will also do that. If we do just sit passive and try to make things difficult for them, they will get around that and will make it difficult. I know Seb said that they have had some issues with breaking down low blocks, but since it's not something that we've often had to do as a team for a long time, it'll be difficult for us to switch straight into that mindset. Yeah. So I do think that there will definitely be moments where we do look to be aggressive, but we have to do it in the right areas and be smart about it. And I do think that if we can do that, then that could help our case. But end of the day, it's going to be fighting a losing battle here, I think. But yeah, I do think that it will look totally different to Everton.
Yeah, I guess it is worrying that we're going to have to do this for the first time in a while, but I still think we can be capable. And I also think him saying that they've struggled against low blocks, and they have, they definitely have, gives me a little bit of hope. I don't want to be too down on us and too defeatist and say, oh, we've just lost the game before it's even started, because I don't actually think that's the case. I think we can do this. One of the things I was worried about going into the Everton game was our spacing between, so with the 4-1-4-1, we saw it in pre-season as well, and the spacing between the defensive midfielder when they were on their own in the midfield was quite inconsistent, I'll say. But in the Everton game, it was a lot better and a lot more compact. We're going to be forced into that in this game. And another thing that was certainly pretty good, there were phases against Everton where it did look a bit man-to-man in certain areas of the pitch. And I think that's probably going to be quite key here as well. I'm not saying you go toe-to-toe with Saka and you get really tight, because you can just do you. But I think with Ødegaard, who is, again, one of my favourite players in the Premier League by a mile, and I think he's very, very underrated, especially by a certain big Arsenal account that doesn't particularly like John. He is absolutely magnificent in and out of possession. I think he's brilliant, and I think you need to get tight to him, so Ampadu might have a bit of a job there. So tactically, I think, like you say, we'll probably be sat quite deep, but I just think you need to have a handle on him, and Stack or Ampadu needs to do a job for the team and needs to just essentially mark him out of the game a little bit. Their other midfielders are still good, but they're not as creative. Rice will shoot from range. Zubimendi looks like a really nice footballer, but I'd rather have them on the ball deep and outside the box than Ødegaard, who can unlock doors and make things happen. Dan, anything tactically in or out of possession that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I expect us to drop into deep or occasional mid block. I'd like us to occasionally be aggressive or have plans to be aggressive at certain phases, like set traps and go. Because you can't completely not change what you are, and Leeds are naturally an aggressive team. So don't completely lose that. Don't go against our kind of natural instincts, but just do it in a smart and intelligent way, and and go hard at them. And when you think you've got an opportunity to break off the back of winning the ball from a mid block sort of position, really. But yeah, I think it's going to be fairly. Arsenal are going to force us into a low block rather than us necessarily wanting to be in a low block. But I think that's fine.
So where are we going to hurt them then, guys? Just one last question before we finish off.
Set pieces.
Set pieces is the big one. We're all saying, yeah.
Well, they've got a bad record, haven't they? Sorry, I might have. They've got a bad record, haven't they, at defending set pieces? I mean, Seb said that in his interview. I think they're one of the mid-table for set pieces last year and conceded that kind of thing. So considering they're a great attacking set piece team, they're not great defending it for whatever reason. So that could
which is really odd, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they win a lot of balls in the box, Martin. They've got a lot of physicality, but yeah, you think we're going to hurt them from set piece, or is there another thing that you're looking at?
Well, yeah, it's really weird that they're poor at defending set pieces, and that did interest me when Seb said it. So, yeah, that will definitely be a target for us. We've clearly had that in mind with the way we've built our squad, that set pieces can be something that we can get extra points from here and there, just those fine margin stuff. But also that I want to speak a bit more about the way Manchester United approached this game, and in terms of their press. If you want the full version of this, I'm basically just copying what John McKenzie did. So watch his video on it, because this really explains it real nicely. But Man United had their attackers, their quote-unquote wide players, narrow, so they had them sucked in field, and with the hybrid press, which Arsenal do, obviously they have players marked all points in the face until they drop back into their mid-block. So when Man United were bringing these attackers in field, it was naturally creating space in the wide areas, which enabled them to get space for their wing backs to bomb forward and get onto the ball. And they would go, I think, what was it that John coined it? I can't remember exactly the term that he used, but it was build up to go direct, so that it was basically passing around a little bit at the back and then looking to find a long ball to get the wing backs into play. Yeah. That kind of thing. But John explains it a lot better than I think I ever could, because John's very, very intelligent and I'm not. But yeah, he did watch that video and that'll explain it a lot better than what I have. But that could potentially be something if maybe we decide to go with two wingers who suit narrow spaces better. But that would mean James dropping out and Brendan Aronson coming in. So, yeah, I don't like the sound of that either. So maybe
face was good there.
Oh no, wait! I've got a better solution, but it won't ever happen. That's Nonto and Ramazani playing in this one. But yeah, I don't even think I would want that, to be honest, because I do think that we would need at least one of the good out of possession focused wingers in there. So you've got to have James or Aronson in there. Nonto was really good against Everton. I'm not going to say he wasn't.
Harrison.
yeah, or Harrison, yes. But generally, he did well when he came on. I will admit that.
He was decent even.
Yeah. There will be uses.
He's a left winger. He's a left winger. Everton use him on the right. It doesn't make any sense.
He's really doing. Anyway.
I do think that there can be uses for Harrison, and I was always a fan of his when we had him under Bielsa. Obviously, those days are long gone. He's not as good as he was then, but he can be useful. But I don't expect him to play. But anyway, my main thing that I wanted to talk about is over now. Go and watch the video that John did to see how Man United did. I'm promoting Man United on the Leeds pod. What have I become?
John founded this pod, so he deserves the shout out.
I think one of the problems for Arsenal was Gyökeres wasn't pressing all that well, was he? So they were kind of going round Gyökeres and then playing it out. So they were kind of baiting him on, weren't they? And he was kind of problematic, wasn't he? Like he couldn't quite get to the pressing.
Start? Gyökeres didn't start, I think. Havertz started, did he?
Yeah. Havertz came on.
I'm thinking of Sesko.
Yes.
Yeah. Wrong team.
Different overpriced striker in the Premier League.
So Gyökeres pressing wasn't quite on point, and it just enabled Manchester United to sort of manoeuvre the ball out to the wing backs, having drawn Arsenal in. So Gyökeres wasn't pressing quite well, wasn't he? And the wingers were coming in to help him and making the space, essentially. So yeah, if the similar things happens and we can get Goodmanson and Bogle on the ball in space, that's great for us. That's really good for us.
Scary though, because then you've got Stack, Ampadu, Tanaka, Longstaff, whoever it is in that midfield, having to cover a lot of fullback distance against a team that you don't want to leave transitions open to, because they'll absolutely murder us if we give them too many opportunities. Yeah. So it's a consideration for Farke. Is there anything either of you wanted to talk about that you had in mind coming into this podcast today about Arsenal that we've not discussed yet, or can I ask the last couple of questions?
Go with last questions. I've covered all I wanted to say.
Same.
Good stuff. Right. Well, what will this game of football look like, Dan? And where do you think it will be won or lost? We did ask Seb this already, and he's given his answer. But what's your answer?
I mean, Odegaard, Saka, those guys, they're going to put a combination together at some point, aren't they? That's going to cut through us. They just are. They're just better on the better level players than what we've got. So, can we reduce? Can we limit that to one or two times this game? And can Perry pull out a save? Can we get a last minute block? Can we just somehow survive those moments? Survive the odd set piece moment? And and only concede one goal, then we've got a chance of coming out with something. If that moment happens early in the game when we get opened up in the first 20 minutes or so, then I think we're snookered, essentially. So it's just about surviving as long as possible without Saka or Odegaard finding space behind us.
Do you think when teams came to play Leeds and they were doing, other fans last season were doing their previews in the Championship and they were saying exactly the same things, just hang on for as long as you possibly can, because it feels horrible being the underdog on the receiving end of this, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Martin, what's your answer?
So it will look very similar to the start of the Everton game. One team will be very dominant with the ball, Arsenal. Hopefully we won't be as passive as what Everton were and pressing the right moments. Arsenal will have a lot of set pieces when they aren't able to penetrate our box, which I feel will happen quite a lot. We've got a lot of good box defenders now. and be all will head things out all day. So I would expect there to be trying to get crossed into our box and trying to get start back post, which Seb mentions, and get those knocked out, leading to more set pieces. So in the end, I think I'm going to copy what Seb said, really, and just say that the set pieces are going to decide this. Whoever attacks and defends set pieces better in this one, I think, will win it.
I don't really have an into our guys. I was trying to find like a nice wrinkle that I could use from last season of teams that came to the Emirates that were at the bottom end of the table, that went there and managed to stay in the game for as long as possible and nick it. There weren't too many examples. The only ones I can find are where West Ham and Bournemouth managed to keep them out a decent amount, and they both did win actually. But yeah, they kept the XG low enough and they managed to restrict them enough, and then they nicked it. And I think at least one of those games it was done by 2 set pieces as well. So got to hope that we're a bit more on point. We weren't necessarily bad against Everton with them. We did create a few moments that were pretty scary for them from set pieces, but you've got to hope that there's a way that we can make one more of them count this time, and hopefully that's something we've worked on this week in training as well. You'd have to think that we're not going to get loads of them, but when we do get a set piece, you really want someone that can make the most of it when it comes. Martin, you had one more thing to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say how funny it is how we barely mentioned set pieces really last season, and now we're in the Premier League and we're talking about set pieces being the main strength of one of the quote-unquote Big Six clubs, which I think is just crazy how that has happened in the few years since we've been out of the league, because it wasn't what I expected Arsenal to end up being. I know their strength isn't only on set pieces. I'm not boiling them down to that, but it is mad how that is how most of us have said is going to be one of the ways this game will be won or lost is on set pieces.
Yep.
It's just how the game's changed, I guess, in the Premier League, and especially for Arsenal. But yeah, it's a funny one.
Yeah, watch out for Gabriel. He is one of the best centre-backs in the air at scoring goals in world football, to be honest. He's not quite Pascal Struijk, but he's pretty good. It's another reason maybe you should keep Struijk in, by the way, guys, because he can score when we actually have those moments. Unless you think, we'll keep the game as tight as possible. If it's 0-0 or even 1-0 to Arsenal late on, we might bring Struijk on as an attacking player, and then he can maybe attack the ball. It is something that I think we might consider this season. And even someone else that can take a corner, Harrison maybe, who's not best at them, but he's probably better than most of our players. You bring him on with Struijk, you bring him on with Bornau, you bring him on with Calvert-Lewin, and you've maybe got an opportunity there from something like that. I'm hoping we can probably scab a point, but we don't make predictions on this pod, so I'm not going to. I think that's everything, isn't it? So just a reminder, the Patreon is patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. We'd love you to come over and join us and get a load of our bonus content. You can get stuff early, like Seb's interview as well. That was actually early for people, if you didn't know. Hosty told me to mention that. Another thing to say is, again, we're on YouTube. Please like, subscribe. Even if you don't want to use YouTube and you don't like using it, please subscribe to us because it's going to really help us out. If we reach a certain amount, we can start really ramping up YouTube content, and so we need to do that. So again, I've been told to plug this as much as possible. So please come on over and leave a comment, discuss what we've talked about. Try and be nice. It'd be nice if you could be pleasant. I think that's everything. We'll be back. When will it be? The Newcastle preview and the Arsenal review, which will be on Sunday, I think, as a double header with the same guys. You two are both on holiday though, aren't you?
We are. Together.
No,
not together.
No, not together. That'd be really nice if that happened one day.
We're going away in the All-Star Saturday caravan, aren't we? So.
You both go
Let us hope that young Will's internet is working, because he's...
Otherwise, it'll be another old-style pod.
You and Hosty.
Or possibly just me and Hosty doing holding the fort. But yes, both enjoy sunny Spain, different parts of it, and I hope you both have a good time. But yeah, all that's left for me to say is thank you very much to Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you to Tom for doing the plug, the Patreon content and whatever else he's got coming on. I think he's doing some stuff this week, isn't he, Martin? On what we did in wide build up. He's doing a video on that, so that'll be great.
Yes, yeah, he's doing a video on the wide build up for our patrons. So yeah, that'll be very good. His last video was very good last season. So looking forward to seeing what he puts up.
Very much looking forward to that, and also thank you to Tom for doing the interview because you were on both pods, technically speaking. And thank you very much to Dan. We're sorry that we left it so late for you, old man.
Okay, I know, bedtime now. Coco.
Absolutely. And thank you, dear listeners and watchers who are hearing and seeing us. Hello, everyone. We'll be back for a review very soon of this, and then, as I said, Newcastle. So have a great week. Goodbye.